Well, here we are back again.
Finally.
Yeah, after a, 2-week sabbatical?
I think 2 weeks, because Bruce is so busy off doing important things that we'll see if we can work the podcast in. What are we going to go, like 2 minutes today? Do you have time for that?
I was thinking a 30-second, little promo thing would be it today. Inglorious Pastords, out.
Roger and Bruce.
We'll see you next week. Maybe.
Love you.
It's actually 50-50. We're not 100% sure. No, I was in the Sierras last week with a group of 8 people for a week, dude. Can you tell how thin my face is? I lost like 4 pounds.
Did you? Did I know? I hate you. It
is great. In the hiking season, everything I gained during the winter, I lose during hike season.
Although I will say, while you were gone, with the temperatures in the 90s and the dew points in the 70s, gosh. All the time you were gone, I was losing some weight as well.
Oh, I believe it.
Mostly water weight.
Right.
But...
I came home to there's water on all of our windows.
Right.
I'm sorry, the ones that don't have the argon gas in them.
Right.
Because they get hot, cold thing going. I immediately got a sinus infection within a day because the Sierra is so dry.
Oh,
and
I'm
my sinuses love that, but as soon as you get here and you go in from hot, cold, because we keep our house cool.
Right.
Apparently freaks out and
no, it's like going outside is almost like going underwater.
Right. So I was telling people in the Sierras last week, I said to explain to them that weren't used to it, I'm like, it's like hiking underwater.
Right.
You're hiking through wet air that is so wet. Sheesh.
I mean, literally within a few minutes, your clothing is wet. I mean, it literally.
Yeah. So had a great trip. Why did we miss it the week before? Oh, I was super busy.
I think that's what I've already said.
No, I was thinking maybe it was you that messed it up. It's me. It's my fault. Anytime the Pastords don't show up, it's going to be on me because, well, frankly, Roger does nothing.
Right.
Roger just sits on this couch day after day,
waiting for the next podcast.
Hoping Bruce will come in.
Bruce going to show up
and do a podcast with him, and it's my couch, which makes it that much sadder.
Yeah, not much going on in my life.
So, Raj, 2 weeks behind. What all are we talking about today? I like the hat, by the way. It's very.
Thank you.
It's got a little cowboy on it.
Well, I remember a couple weeks ago we had talked, and you had been on another one of your hikes.
Yeah, well, I do that a lot.
Well, but this was one that you had something happen you had never had.
The 4 copperheads.
You want to share the 4 copperheads?
Have we not talked about that yet?
No.
Oh my God.
No, in other words, that was the week where we almost were going to do it. Yeah. And then because I figured that was going to be a great story.
That's a great story. So yeah, we get into.
People love that.
People love that. So we get in, and this doesn't happen very often, people. Just want you to know. Let me make a little caveat. I've never had snakes in camp before. I've never had a snake in camp.
Snakes.
And to this day, I've never had a snake in camp. I did, however, 2 weeks ago have 4 snakes in camp, copperheads. It was bad. I mean,
copperhead sounds dangerous. Is that dangerous?
Yeah, it's a pit viper. It's poisonous.
I knew that.
Unlikely to kill you, which is good. Rarely fatal. Versus a rattlesnake. I did a lot of research on this after the event. Just to know how bad this could have gone. But yeah, but very aggressive. So you can get bitten real easy.
Okay.
And they don't warn you in any way. So like a rattler typically is going to rattle, let you know I'm here.
And I don't want you to be here.
And I don't want you to be here.
And frankly, I don't think you want to be here.
So we had a father-son that set their tent up 3 feet from a rattlesnake nest.
Not a rattlesnake,
that other thing I said. A copperhead nest or den.
Den.
Or what would be another word there, I wonder? Home. Right. It's a copperhead home. And there was 4 of those little suckers. And normally I let nature be. But these little guys started running around the tent and
yeah, I saw a video you had of one trying to climb the tent.
Well, I didn't actually want to mention that, Raj. I really want people to hike with me in the future. And
join Bruce on his next adventure. Help. You never know what you're going to see.
The funny thing was, right before we left the tents to go back to the walls of Jericho, because it's about a half-mile hike back to the falls, I said, hey, everyone make sure and close your tents so you don't get bugs or snakes in them. And I said the snake part. Right, like a snake's going to go in your tent. Well, that was a good call by me, because that particular tent that had been left open was the one that had the snake going. Good news, though, for all you tent dwellers. A snake can't seem to climb a tent because of the fabric. It's too slick.
Right.
So every time he would try to go up, it would go.
So they just want to go inside the tent and just where they can.
So we had a little David and Goliath moment. We would hold a flashlight on the snake's eyes, and it would kind of freeze, and then we would throw rocks the size of your head onto the snake and kill it. Because we didn't have hose and machetes and all that stuff. But we got rid of all 4 of them, and we had a wonderful evening. That's not true. The rest of the evening, everyone was paranoid.
How does anyone sleep after that?
At one point, we're sitting around the fire, and this one guy goes, I wonder if snakes can go in and out of fires. And this other guy jumped up and goes, there he is. It was a stick that had fallen.
Everyone's seeing snakes.
We're seeing them everywhere. Literally, I'm going back to my tent. I've got 16 headlamps on. Oh, I mean, I've got so much light. I am making sure that. But so that happened.
I was thinking, though, with that story, I started thinking about snakes in the Bible, and
snakes on.
No.
Snakes in the Bible. That's great. Here we are, the Inglorious Pastords. Today's episode, we're going to talk about snakes in the Bible. Well, perfect, right?
Again, we have these unscripted things, but I thought, what are some of the snake stories?
Well, we had a serpent in chapter 2 of the first book.
Right. So that's
interesting.
And kind of bizarre, right? I mean, isn't the first snake story kind of bizarre?
Well, yes, he appears to communicate.
I know. So we know about rattlers, but when they actually start talking to you.
Because I always imagine it sound like this. Come over here.
Right. No, we
check out the apple. And you have this idea that serpent might have been more reptilian, in the sense of, when I say reptilian, more like having a salamander legs or a lizard, because it said from now on you're going to crawl on your belly.
Right.
Because most of the reptiles have 4 legs, except for the serpent, which is just an interesting thing.
Yes.
So it's like Satan lost his legs.
So again, an intriguing story.
In the very next book, Moses holds up a snake on a rod so that people can be healed from snakes that were biting them. And Jesus references that later as the Son of Man being lifted up to bring healing from those who have been snake bit by sin.
Yeah, no. So it's this weird, is snake good or bad? Is that a,
Roger, it's on all of the medical, it's a logo over the medical profession.
Yes.
A snake on sort of a cross.
Or on a pole or some kind of a.
Yeah. Snakes are good.
Well,
we did have another snake in last week too.
Wait.
Not poisonous that we know of, but yeah, poor little Caitlin Weeks. She's a 21-year-old girl that was sitting on a rock out by the water. Everyone's swimming. And this black snake with an orange stripe running vertically up its body just came right over to her. And you have never seen anyone scramble up granite that fast. I mean, woo!
Without a rope.
She was gone.
She scaled that.
She was gone. But again, I don't think it was poisonous. So here's the thing about snakes. Snakes are good and bad. Yeah. In the sense that if there's a snake around my house, I don't kill it. If it's a poisonous snake, I probably would. But non-poisonous, I'll leave because they eat rats and mice and stuff that I don't want in my house.
Right.
Of course, Marlena would argue, I don't want a snake in my house either, which I totally get. I think we've only had a couple of snakes around our house, though.
And some snakes are really beautiful, which is kind of funny me saying, because I am that person. Yeah, not a huge fan, of just
of the snake.
But you go into a zoo, a reptilian house or whatever, and you see it, and there's some gorgeous, I mean, they're just they are fascinating.
Oh, and some people love them.
And frightening at the,
let them crawl all over them,
right?
And wrap around them.
Are you fine with that?
No, I'm an outdoorsy guy, okay, but I'm not going to let a snake wrap itself around my neck.
Right.
What if he decides to give me a little love squeeze?
I don't care if it's innocent play.
Right, I know. He may not be trying to kill me.
He didn't mean to kill you. He was just.
Yeah, the point is he killed you.
Right.
Okay, that's what matters.
He was overly affectionate.
Let's stay to the point here. He killed you. So I think snakes are good and bad, but poisonous snakes in camp are always bad. There's just never something good that can go from that.
Right.
I don't care if it is eating mice.
Well, was that the story for the Israelites that snakes did come in the camp?
Well, yeah, because they were rebelling against God on something.
Right. So God sent that as a kind of judgment.
Vipers.
But then their salvation was going to come by looking to a snake on a pole. Okay. And then that God would use that, which seems bizarre. And I look at
Roger said that. In case you're wondering which pastor you can't watch what's happening, Roger said that was bizarre.
Well, it does raise the question of, how you end up handling some of the bizarreness,
right,
in the pages of the Bible.
Yeah, and the way that I looked at that particular story, and even Jesus referencing himself, it's interesting that God sent a human being to save humans. Humans were the ones that sinned, that caused the problem. And so God decides to, using a very simple word, fix the problem by becoming human and dying, being lifted up and dying, and anyone looking to Christ in the same way is healed. Yeah, it's all the parallels from the Old Testament to New are fascinating, many of them bizarre. There's a lot of bizarre stories in the Old Testament. The most bizarre ones, part of the reason that I believe them to be literal or true is because Jesus references the weirdest ones.
Yes.
He talks about Lot's wife.
Right.
He talks about Jonah and the whale. He talks about just as it was in Noah's day.
Right.
Now, I realize he could be referencing what they understood to be a myth or parable.
Right.
From that time frame. But at the very least, Jesus references three of the most bizarre stories as a reference or as a warning for their current time.
Right. And part of this is one place that I've landed is God, it seems, is absolutely fascinated with analogies and pictures. There's so much power. So even where you take an image of slavery, we can look at certain things that God did where one might just too quickly say, okay, God approved of this, or this was entirely, but slavery was going to be this powerful image of really what walking away from God does,
of what sin puts us into.
So, right. So you have slavery, but then you have these other images where, even how the tabernacle was built. Everything had their measurements and it had certain images and pictures, and they would tie to stories. And so often, but again, Jonah, one of those bizarre stories, but there's this image. It's almost like God keeps setting up his work in the world through images, and they're images that help.
Well, because I was even counseling when you're dealing with conflict with your spouse.
Yeah.
I'll say sometimes, instead of just talking about this thing that made you angry or this thing that made you sad or this thing that made you feel betrayed, whatever, I'll say sometimes give them an emotional word picture. It's like, I had a little teeny tiny baby bunny that was so cute and I loved the baby bunny. And then you stepped on it and the bunny died and it made me sad. Now, this is a very symbol word picture. I was trying to think of what's the.
It's also a bit. It's also kind of macabre.
Right.
You squashed my baby bunny.
But then you could say, that's how I felt when I had bought the new dress for the dinner out that we were going to, that was at the special restaurant, and you said, "Are you wearing that?" Your bunny got squashed.
He could hear it better by her telling him, "You squashed her." He squashed her bunny.
Yes, because that's exactly what Nathan the prophet did to David. David could hear the story.
Yes,
that led him. It was an emotional word picture.
Right.
Someone took the little baby lamb. You had a whole flock of sheep over here. You took someone else's that their precious baby lamb. It's an emotional word picture. I was just trying to let the listeners know, even though Roger didn't think it was very effective, Nathan the prophet actually used an emotional word picture.
No, yes, and I think so. One of the things I've learned as a teacher over time is the power and weight of images. But it shouldn't surprise me because the Bible's just full of them, and God is fascinated. And so again, I think that's
and it's interesting that Jesus, at one place it says Jesus taught nothing other than in parables in one particular setting that he was in, and his disciples would ask him about that. Why don't you just tell people plainly what's going on?
Right.
And it seemed to me, I want them to think. I want them to listen, really listen.
Right.
I want them to make an application. In other words, it's the thing, even you learn at writers' conferences, they'll say, show, don't tell.
Yes.
You can just tell someone the frog jumped off the rock into the water. Or you can show that happening, legs flexing.
The muscles tense as he prepared to.
Exactly, as he propelled himself into the cool river of.
Right.
This is why I don't write fiction, frankly. Okay. I'm not very good at it. I would much rather tell people, but that's okay. But Jesus used parables over and over again, stories, simple stories that people could relate to. And he would always say, the kingdom of heaven is like, what can I compare it to? And there's a lot of different comparisons. So there's all sorts of components of the kingdom that he's sharing through parable and story.
Right. Which I think I get the sense that at even image and story moves into our heart more. I think about even the weight of.
Think about that. Yeah.
I think about the weight of the story of the two sons. The wayward son who runs off, and then the wayward son who stays home. We don't think of it that way, but you got this story, and you just think about, even to this day, how the story impacts people's hearts. In other words, he could just preach sermons. He could say something.
Some of you guys are just living for this world, and some of you guys are just super religious.
Right. And God loves both of you.
Yeah.
And you just need to believe that.
But the story,
I think that the story gets into the heart of the elder brother types, and the story gets in the heart of the younger brother types, the runaways and
maybe story is so good because maybe it's easier to see ourselves in the story than it is in just sort of text or in words. Oh, I'm kind of the older brother,
Yes.
I'm kind of super religious. I'm a little jealous of people that are getting to do fun things that I don't get to do.
Right. Yeah. And I'm I think I come back to, there's so many things in the page of the Bible, even where something is edgy or sometimes even bizarre. And of course, part of the bizarre thing also is the world was extremely different 3, 4, 5,000 years. I mean, people, we have this idea, we know exactly, people were just like we are, or things.
Oh, right.
But you're again, even if you think about in the earliest days after God created men and women, we don't even know all the impact of the fall and how far sin set the world back, how odd the world would be at that time, where some things we look back and things that seem so very bizarre.
How far sin set the world back?
Yeah.
Would we have discovered the wheel earlier? No, on our hike, we'll do a card every night. We'll pull a random card out of this thing called Base Camp, and it just asks a funny question or an interesting question. One of them was, what's the one invention that you could not live without? And one person said, honestly, it's the wheel. Because he went way, 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 way back. He says, we don't have a wheel. We don't have anything. We don't have, I mean, it was fascinating. I was like, well, yeah, the wheel's kind of an important deal, as it turns out.
Yeah, it's considered to be significant.
I immediately saw a jet plane that had little square things on it, and they're like, we can't get this thing off the ground. Right? The wheel.
What's wrong, Herman?
Well, no one's discovered the wheel yet. We're trying to make it slide. We're always trying to make it glide and slide. They're oiling the bottom of the square, make it glide more easily instead of rolling on an axle. It's interesting.
I also think God's an out of the box. In other words, so God is so often, it seems, keeping us on our toes. We think we've got him figured out. So you think even this thing that, okay, you've got the serpent.
Yep.
But it's not as if somehow that the enemy, Satan, commandeered the image of the serpent, or the serpent as sort of his domain,
his brand.
You have Jesus saying to Nicodemus, just as the serpent was lifted up in the wilderness, so the Son of Man is going to be lifted up, so that all who look to him. So those who looked to the serpent were saved. Even whether God's redeeming, this isn't his. He doesn't own the serpent. That's not whatever he chose to do. I'm still going to redeem that. So just fascinating that Jesus, in that sense, is the serpent on the pole that people look to and are saved.
And he's also the one that crushes the head of the serpent.
Yes.
It's interesting. So we've decided snakes are good and bad.
Right.
I mean, or they're neutral.
Well, in reality, yes. And this is where, even you think about images in the Bible, they can go either way. Water can drown and kill and destroy.
Yeah. Fire can kill and destroy.
Life. Salt,
fire can create warmth.
Salt can kill.
Yeah.
Salt gives life to things. Salt. So you think about all of these things that come down to context.
Yeah. So it is everything in that sense neutral.
Well,
potentially used for good or bad. Because certain things we attach to bad that are not bad.
Yep. That's a good point. Yes. You're thinking of an example or trying to,
Well, or going to the other question that others have argued, everything is sacred, which is its own interesting thing. There's nothing that's not sacred. Everything that God created is sacred. It's neutral. It can be used for good or bad.
But it's why, yes, you can have food that's good. The issue is not whether it's offered to idols or that. Wasn't it Paul who said, yeah, where I give thanks. I give thanks for it is that sense that I think where we've tried to make, well, you can think from our past, we tried to make a certain type of music, rock music. That was going to be evil, or a certain kind of clothing. Yeah, certain kind of clothing was.
And I'm still convinced that polka is evil. Polka music.
Well, yodeling maybe.
Yodeling. Yodeling. That's evil. Polka and yodeling. We're clear on that, as evil goes. Yeah, it maybe on all those things. It has to do what you do with any of those things.
Right.
Boy, I'm way off topic today.
Well, it's not like we have to have a topic.
Well, have you ever wondered why? Just curious, why Steve Jobs and the Apple people chose Apple with a bite out of it as their brand. It elicits a narrative.
Okay.
Doesn't it?
If you believe that a particular narrative involved an apple.
Just curious.
Oh, I know.
I understand it was just fruit. We've attached it to an apple because I think we want to attach it. No one sees Eve eating a banana. I mean, that's just not a pineapple. Nope. That's going to be problematic. It's the apple.
But this is the problem of how quickly we decide. You could literally talk to people who would be certain that's what the Bible said. That's actually right.
Okay.
I'm just talking about these things we pick up that are just so obvious which is its own warning tale about how quickly we fill in a gap in a story, and suddenly it becomes a part of the story, and without even realizing.
Right. It becomes a major part of the apple. Yeah, there were some bizarre stories in the Bible. Here's a question. We've only got 5 minutes or so, but we're having to cut it a little short today because Bruce is
busy.
Bruce is busy. I like what you did there. That was good. But how many of the stories is it possible in your mind that some of the stories in the Old Testament or even in the New Testament were story, not historical fact? For instance, Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt, or the ground opening up and all of Korah and his family falling into it, or Jonah being, swallowed by a large fish. I'm just curious.
You're crazy.
Is it important to you that it's all literal, or could some of that be an analogy, a parable, a Aesop's fable kind of thing? Well, the tortoise and the hare.
The reality is,
in 5 minutes, Roger's going to give us the definitive answer.
Well, you can't escape. There are countless stories in the Bible that are, shall I say, supernatural.
Yep.
So my concern would be where anyone ends up, okay, well, we know the supernatural stories that actually didn't occur. So
Thomas Jefferson like.
Right. Where we just know, okay, so those then would be fables, and this idea that we can look back into and know which ones are true, because the ones that are believable, the ones that are, and you're going to have, at the end of the day, you're going to have, Jesus' resurrection out because you have the same thing.
It could fall in the same category.
Right. Is that just
it's a myth.
It was a nice story, and it had an image about new life that's helpful. The reality is,
oh, that's good.
There is supernatural all through the pages of the Bible. Now, that doesn't preclude then. Some, I think, have wondered, the story of Job. Is this more of a play or a kind of a powerful story illustrating
a Shakespearean thing? Because there's a lot of dialogue in the middle 37.
There's a time, right? It's a very unique kind of book. So I can't preclude whether or not. I mean, in other words, is it possible? It's possible
there are both.
Right. It's possible of both, but
I love what you said. If you try to take the supernatural out of the Bible, you've taken God out of the Bible, because God is by nature supernatural,
right. And He's going to intervene, and actually, God's supernatural intervention is core to the story. Now, I think we also have to live in a humility of we're looking at an ancient book,
right?
And we'll even look at, we'll too quickly turn the Psalms or something into our best understanding today. How without understanding how a Psalm might be seen, how Proverbs might be seen in that day. So the reality is there were stories, even if you think about the story to David from the prophet. You were just alluding to it.
Ah, yes, the little emotional word picture about the
emotional
lamb.
So are there places where there are stories, and are there some things that we might discover, okay, yes, that was a that was a parable, or sure, that could happen.
You know, the one that I would have loved to have seen? The Tower of Babel. They're all up there working one day. What in the world did he just say? The confusion of languages.
Right.
That would be problematic, because now you're just looking for people that actually understand what you just said. And so you have people going all over the place. It's just a fascinating way to split people up.
Well, and I also...
What's your favorite bizarre story?
No, I wonder how tall that structure was.
Yeah.
I don't know. We think in our modern, they probably didn't, they may have gotten that
stories.
Thing 20.
Oh, you think 20?
Well, I was feet. Okay. I was going to say
20 feet. I was thinking 20 stories.
You were starting to go stories. I was starting to go feet. But I'm saying where we kind of in our minds, they probably couldn't do very much. I'm really quite curious, particularly when you had Noah at some point that built a pretty large boat. The idea that engineering wouldn't have been that advanced, or I'm actually quite curious how tall that structure was, this thing. And but it's this reminder of sometimes God doing that weird story, doing a strange thing to save us. And maybe there's so many stories where the confusion of languages is
it saves us. The serpent on a pole
that
saves us.
But even today, where
the boat in the water, Peter argues from that story, baptism symbolizes the water that now saves us.
Right.
That's interesting.
Where there's still the call of God all the time, trust me.
Yeah.
He would tell at a certain point, just do or Jesus would say, wipe someone's eyes with mud and tell them to go wash in a particular pool. Well, part of it, you're going to say it's bizarre. He's saying, trust me, I've got a plan. But how many times does God put forward something that in our mind, oh my goodness, I know better than that. And God says, just do it.
Yeah,
just trust me.
It's Naaman the leper.
Right.
I've got far better water if I'm going to bathe 7 times back home.
Right.
No, it's really important you bathe over there in the muddy Jordan.
Yeah.
No, it's just, trust me.
Just right. Fill all these cisterns with water. Just fill all these,
Why?
Well, no, they need wine.
Yeah, they're looking for wine here.
Water's not going to help here.
I don't know if you missed what they said.
I know they've
earlier.
had a little too much to drink.
They ran out of,
but they're going to be able to tell water from wine.
They ran out of wine, Jesus. They've got plenty of water. They got water there.
And it just, trust me. And I think there is this thing, God's saving us by undermining our self-confidence and our self-assurance.
Roger.
And don't we need
that
and
beyond
today?
Our intellect.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, because that's one of the things that keeps some people from faith. Intellect. In their mind,
right.
If
I'm too smart for that.
Right, I'm too smart for that. A supernatural thing couldn't happen because it's scientifically impossible. Although scientists are still finding things that they're like, that's not possible.
Right.
It's happening.
Right.
But it's not possible.
It's not possible.
So in that sense, science can't explain everything. It can explain certain things, but not everything. Because, well, in one sense, God created science. That's making it supernatural.
Right. But there's this humbling, and I just think even for us, I think in America, this is such an important, good, healthy word, just because the idea that we have so much figured out, and so we so casually will rule out something. Oh, that can't be. We're smarter than that. We know better. And
simple trust in Jesus often brought these miracles.
Yes.
Jesus, you don't have to come to my house. You just speak the word and it'll be done. Well, I've never seen faith like that before.
Because you trusted me, it's going to happen. You trusted me.
Yeah.
So
That's big.
With all the bizarre things in the Bible and all the bizarre things that Jesus said, trust him. Maybe that's the word for today.
That's our podcast for today. Don't trust all snakes, but trust Jesus. I could get a t-shirt with that. Don't trust snakes, trust Jesus.
That's not one of your best ideas.
I'm a little tired. I'm not going to lie. I didn't sleep well last night. It's been a long week. My legs are tired.
So this episode of Snakes in the Bible.
Snakes in the Bible.
Is slithering away.
Slithering away.